At Vanguard, this is more than just a retirement plan. This is your cappuccino date in Italy, the beach house with the matching bicycles. It's your rental car down memory lane, and weekends reuniting with friends from over the years. This is the future you imagined, and Vanguard is here to help you build it. Because at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor, you're an owner. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor.
You know, you go farther down, all the mountains obstruct, but there's no obstruction up there. So I called AAA, and we talked because they didn't know how to find me. I told them where I was, and I don't think that really computed with the guy on the phone, and he kept saying, "Well, what's the address?"
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Today we're talking to Dierdre Wolownick. If you remember that name, that's because we had Dierdre on the show a few years ago to talk about climbing El Capitan, which is a giant rock face in Yosemite Valley in California. I think it's the largest rock face in the world, or at least one of them, 3,000 plus feet straight up. And it was, it's iconic, first of all, but it was also made very famous through the documentary Free Solo back in 2019. Free Solo featured Alex Honnold, who was basically free soloing, climbing that rock without any rope. Alex Honnold is Dierdre's son. So, yeah, she's the mother of Alex Honnold, which is pretty cool. So she started climbing after Alex introduced it to her, but we see where Alex gets his drive and his creativity from. Dierdre is multi-talented, extremely smart, well-traveled, and just an all-around pretty inspiring person. And so once Alex introduced her to climbing, she decided to go for some pretty big projects. So at 66, Dierdre became the oldest woman to climb El Capitan, and then this past year, at 70 years old, she again climbed El Capitan to celebrate her 70th birthday and became the oldest woman once again to climb El Capitan. So let's go ahead and jump in so Dierdre can tell her story. And also, between when we recorded this just a few weeks ago and today, Dierdre has welcomed a granddaughter into this world, Alex Honnold's daughter. So congratulations, Dierdre. And I hope you're doing well. Hope that's going well. And yeah, thanks for being on the show. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Dierdre Wolownick, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing as okay as can be expected in the middle of a pandemic.
And you mentioned, too, it's a cold day, especially for where you are in the 30s. How do you handle the cold? Or are you pretty accustomed to it, or is it still kind of like, oof?
I hate to be cold. I hate to be cold. That's one thing I love about, Sacramento. It's pretty mild most of the time. Too hot for me in the summer, but when it is cold like this, though, I like to go running to keep myself in shape, when I'm not actively climbing. But it's too cold to run when it's in the 30s and 40s.
Right. So not a lot of time in Yosemite this time of year.
No, none at all. None at all. It's really cold up there. And my little car doesn't handle the snow well, so I can't get over the Sierra to get there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's very true. Well, tell us about, we talked last time in 2019, right before your book, The Sharp End of Life, came out. It was a few months beforehand. But, a lot has happened in the last few years. How would you sum up the last few years for you in your life?
Holy cow, a whirlwind. That's how I'd sum it up. No, a whirlwind. The book did come out. The Sharp End of Life is out there. You can get it anywhere you can buy books. On Amazon. I was number 11 on Amazon for a while, so it's out there and doing stuff. I went on a book tour, and I got as far as England on my book tour, and New York, and Southern Cal.
Didn't you have an injury right before that, too?
I did. Not an injury exactly. My left foot was ripped apart and put back together in a better fashion. I had a lot of damage, a lot of structural damage from my whole life. It's got worse and worse and worse, and so I had it repaired. And yeah, it was pretty bad. It was massive surgery, and I was off my feet for like 4 months, almost 5 months, which is horrible for me and for any athlete. Not that I'm any great shakes of an athlete, but it was hard, really hard being off my feet that long. And I'm still actually coming back. But it has changed what I can do outdoors a lot because it didn't go terribly well. So, yeah, a lot has changed. And my son has gotten married and moved once or twice. And I've been up El Capitan once or twice or a few times in the ensuing 3 years. A lot has gone on in these 3 years. Even though you're in the middle of a pandemic, there's been stuff going on.
And if I'm not mistaken, you're getting ready to be a grandmother as well.
I am, yes. New experience.
Is that exciting?
Yes, it is. Brand new experience. A new learning experience. Love it.
That's awesome. Well, I was going to say, you talk about not being, physically being limited, but that didn't stop you from climbing El Cap recently for your 70th birthday.
No. Well, the first time I did it was with Alex, so like 4 years ago, right before the book came out. And I found out I can do it. I don't do it the way the elite climbers do it. I mean, I don't climb the rock with my hands, with my feet, yes, but not with my hands. I use, I Juma, which is use mechanical ascenders on rope. So when I was sitting around thinking about, what do I want to do for my 70th? My 70th is coming up, So, I could go to a restaurant, but you can't do that in COVID, and you can't have a big group of friends get together during COVID and all this stuff. So I thought to myself, well, I never actually got to see the top of El Cap because by the time Alex and I got to the top, it was dark and it was, we came down in the dark and there was not a sliver of a moon that night. So I really didn't see anything on the top. And I wanted to see what it was like up there. I wanted to see the view from up there. And I wanted to see the sunset and the sunrise from the top. And so that occurred to me while I was thinking about my 70th. I said, heck yeah, that's what I want to do for my 70th. And so I started training like 15 weeks out, more or less. I made some friends who, I call them my youngins, my young friends who were willing, climbers who were willing to carry stuff for me, because when I made I decided I want to go up El Cap, but then a few months later I decided I want to sleep up there, I want to camp up there so I can see the sunrise and sunset. So that requires a lot of gear, a lot of stuff that I couldn't possibly carry on my own, while going up. So I recruited a few friends and they had friends and, boyfriends and girlfriends and stuff, all climbers. And then a few of my friends wanted to join in because, this is an opportunity to get up El Cap. For regular climbers, weekend climbers like me, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. How else are you going to get to climb El Cap unless you tag along with somebody who's doing it? So a lot of I had a friend come out from New York State and one from Arizona, one from Southern Cal. There were 11 of us who went up total.
What an experience. So how did it end up going as far as, experiences in life? Was it just one of the greatest things ever? Was it more difficult than you imagined?
Absolutely. I will never, ever top that as a birthday party. No matter what I do for my 80th is not going to top El Cap, but my main climbing partner for that season, Garrett, he's in his 20s, young, in shape, in form, and training to do El Cap with his partner, as the real elite climbers do it, really to climb El Cap. And so he was training to climb El Cap anyway. And we met, we talked, we hung out for a while, and we met his girlfriend and met a bunch of people. And so what I wanted to do would kind of force them to get familiar with El Cap, to practice on El Cap, to train more, and that's exactly what they wanted anyway. So it was like a match made in heaven. So we did. We trained and trained. Garrett and I trained a lot on El Cap, and actually the first time he was ever on El Cap, was with me. So he appreciated that. I appreciated him and his help. And so it was, mutually a beneficial arrangement.
Wow. So tell us a story, or tell us about something that made the experience just completely like, this is why I did this. Can you encapsulate that for us through a story?
El Capitan is an amazing place to be. I mean, it's terrifying. It's awe-inspiring. It's not your everyday adventure, to put it mildly. I'm not really sure where to start. That's a big question. Everything about it, just the training alone, was so good for the soul, for the body. It's an amazing place to be, and you have to really make friends with the exposure, because you're really out there hanging on the side of this thing. I was with Alex too, but with Alex, it was go, go, go. We just zipped up. I zipped up those ropes. It took 13 hours for us to get up, doing it on, because we did an elite climbers route, regular climbing, technical climbing route. He climbed it, he led it technically, and then he would drop a static rope for me to clip onto, and I would climb the static rope, which is a lot of work. It's a lot of physical work. So that took 13 hours. And so I got really, really accustomed to hanging on the side of this vertical 3,000-foot cliff. And it takes a while to wrap your mind around that. It really does. And especially if you're, just a weekend climber like me, it's not your everyday experience, not by a long shot. I'm not sure where to start. Do you have any specific questions?
I'd say a story from your experience climbing it. Was there a moment, or was it waking up and seeing sunrise that just made you say, "This, I'll never forget this"?
It was a combination of things, really. I get a little backstory first. 2 weeks prior to the actual climb, to my birthday, I climbed it on my actual birthday. I think it was a Thursday or a Tuesday. And 2 weeks prior, I wanted to, I guess you'd call it, do a test run, if you will. I wanted to try it with just me and Garrett, again, my main training partner. And I wanted to go up and down, because I knew I could do that in one day, and I had done it with Alex. I wanted to go up and down in one day, and just to be sure that I could actually get to the top, because I had never really done that except with Alex on the other side of El Cap, and it was a totally different experience. Because I had friends coming, like I said, from New York, from Arizona, from Southern Cal. I didn't want them, to book their airplane flight if I wasn't able to do it. So we did a test run, and it was absolutely exhausting. Because we were going fast. I wanted to get up and down in sunlight, in a day. And B, because it's just exhausting. It's a 3,000.
Yeah, you're climbing a mountain.
It's a 3,000-foot cliff straight up. There's a lot of scrambling involved. I mean, the climbers call it hiking, but I wouldn't call it hiking. I would call it definitely, you're scrambling over boulders and trees and rocks and big things and dangerous things, and a lot of scrambling, and then you get to the ropes, and the climb is basically 3 different thirds of terrain. The first third is the scrambling through the forest and over big boulders and talus fields and stuff. Then you get to the ropes. The ropes, there are 5, I think, 5.5 fixed ropes, which means they always hang there. They are attached to bolts that are permanent in the rock, and they always hang there. And periodically, climbers replace them, or the rangers replace them, or different to keep them safe, because they're out there in the elements, all winter long. So I wanted to check the ropes, because a lot of people were going to be using them that day, and they wanted them to be safe. And B, I wanted to see if I could do it. So we did it, and I was absolutely wrecked. not wrecked physically, but more wrecked mentally. I was exhausted. But by the time I got like 99% to the top, I didn't care if I got to the top at all. I was too tired. But I did. I kept slogging, and we went to the top, and we went back down. And on the way back down, like 2 hours up from the ground still, I discovered that I'd lost my car keys and house keys. Had fallen out. I had ripped holes in my pockets, sitting on my butt, scooting down some rocks, a bunch of rocks. And my keys had obviously popped out through the hole.
What did you do?
Well,
you can't really leave or get home.
My car was parked down there, and thankfully we had gone in. Garrett has a van, and so his van was parked down there, and my car was parked in there. So I said, fortunately, as the higher you go on El Cap, the better the service is. Cell service,
yes.
Because there's no interruption to the signal, it just sails through the air up there. So, you go farther down, all the mountains obstruct, but there's no obstruction up there. So I called AAA, and we talked with, because they didn't know how to find me.
That's probably a first for them.
Exactly. As I said, I told them where I was, and I don't think that really computed with the guy on the phone, and he's saying, "Well, what's the address?" Well, there is no address.
Oh my gosh!
What are you next to? Well, I'm not next to anything. I'm on El Cap. So we went round and round. Finally, he got a locksmith on the phone with us. So we had a 3-way phone call, and the locksmith knew El Cap. He knew Yosemite, more or less. So. He was able to locate me. He didn't come till the next day, though, because it's not exactly around the corner for him. He came from the Central Valley of California, which is like a 2-hour trip from where he was. So anyway, he came the next day. But Garrett's van was there too, so he drove me to where I was staying that night.
Oh my gosh, that is so crazy. So you never got those keys back?
I did not. He had to rekey my car. Yeah.
The directions could have been, go through the tunnel, giant rock on your left. You can't miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
Biggest rock you've ever seen, right on your left. Yeah. I'm right up there.
Unfortunately, there are a million different places to park to go up that rock.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. It's wow. That is hilarious. Was there ever a moment that you thought, I'm just gonna go to Applebee's for my birthday?
It occurred to me, but we were still in COVID, and I still couldn't invite my friends and all that,
So you had to do something outside, and if you're gonna be outside, might as well climb El Cap,
might as well go for the gold, exactly.
Might as well go for it. Well, tell us about that's stressful enough having to do the practice round. People are flying in from all over the country, and by the way, I love that. That's like, hey, let's make an amazing memory, an amazing experience for everybody.
Exactly.
When did it click for you? Because that can be stressful, all those plans, people coming in. When was the relief? Was it when you got close to the top, or were you about halfway up and thought, I've got this?
No. When we started out in the morning, I knew I could do it, and I knew my friends were capable. 2 of the friends, all of them had never been up El Cap. 2 of them had never even been on El Cap, even down by the ground,
What had any of them never been to Yosemite?
No, I think they'd all been there before.
Okay. Still, I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Which is kind of worse because they knew what to expect.
Right.
As they were planning for it. But one of them had never used Jumars before, the mechanical ascenders. And we didn't have her own. So one of my young climber friends, lent her a pair. So she was learning as she went, but she's a lot younger than I am, and a lot smaller, a lot lighter, a lot more lithe. She did fine. They all did fine. So no, I had no trepidations that morning. We started out at 5:30 in the morning. And I knew I was going up El Cap. Whatever else happened, whoever else dropped out of the story, it didn't affect what I was going to do. I knew I was going to the top, and whoever else could make it was welcome to go with me. But no, there was no trepidation at the beginning, really.
What did it feel like to summit and to have champagne and cake at the top.
Oh,
But
that was such a cool thing, and that was a complete surprise to me. I brought with me when my son's movie came out, Free Solo. I went to a lot of the premieres. I went to the Oscars, and we got a bunch of little gifts at the dinner. The dinner the night before, they gave us a little packet of gifts, and one of the things was a little individual sized bottle of champagne, the real good champagne, like Moet Chandon, the good stuff. And so I had saved that. I figured I'd probably never open it. It was just because I went to the Oscars. Who gets to go to the Oscars that So I was just going to save it. But I brought it up for my 70th birthday on El Cap. I got it in honor of a movie on El Cap. Heck, I was going to use it on El Cap, so I brought it up with me. So I figured that would be my birthday celebration, because all these other guys were carrying haul bags, which are like almost as tall as I am. And these haul bags were filled with all of our gear. Because once I decided to camp up there, which is different from going up and down, we did that with just a bag on our back. But camping up there, especially with 3 old women, requires a sleeping pad. I can't just sleep on the ground. That ship has sailed long ago. I have too many bone anomalies and spurs, and you can't. Garrett and his friends, they all agreed to carry our camping stuff. So, a sleeping pad, a sleeping bag, food for dinner, water for dinner and for drinking, and water for everything, for washing, for water, and breakfast. And all that stuff is very heavy. So I knew, he was carrying all that stuff. I'd carry my little bottle of champagne. I had it on my back. So we got up to the top, and I'm kind of skipping a lot here, but you mentioned the champagne. I sat down, as we all made our dinners. We all carried our own little backpacking food on our backs. And as we made our dinners, I got out my bottle of champagne. And, for after dinner, for our dessert, for my birthday party, as it were. And I was opening my little bitty bottle, working hard on it. And Garrett pulled out a real big bottle of champagne. He had carried up on his back not only all my stuff and my water and all that junk and clothes and everything, food. He brought up, I think, 3 bottles of champagne and little plastic flute glasses to drink it in, and birthday cakes.
Holy cow!
I was astounded. They had all this birthday party stuff, which all is heavy. That was a large commitment on their part, on his part. I think he carried it all.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible.
At Vanguard, this is more than just a retirement plan. This is your cappuccino date in Italy, the beach house with the matching bicycles. It's your rental car down memory lane, and weekends reuniting with friends from over the years. This is the future you imagined, and Vanguard is here to help you build it. Because at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
So we had a real birthday party up there. I was absolutely floored, absolutely astounded that they would do that, because that's a large commitment.
Right. You was probably thinking, I wish you would have told me you were bringing some out of left a bottle. Yeah, I don't think there's probably been a more deserving consumption of an Oscar champagne bottle than what you did.
Exactly.
It's literally about the rock that you're on.
Exactly.
And that's a great point. Like, that rock is so important to you, to your family. How much were you thinking about that? I know that, you've climbed this before, but this is, 4 years later. How much were you thinking about that as you were going up?
Not at all. Not at all. I was too busy. No, it's a completely demanding climb. It really, no matter how you do it, whether you do it the way my son does it on the rock, on the, the elite routes that go up, the rock, or whether you go up, because what we went
Right.
up was called the descent route. It's the way all the climbers come down, because you can, it's really, really hard to come down off any of the other routes. There are 105, I think, climbing routes up El Cap. And, on the west side and on the east side, it's kind of the nose is kind of the middle seam of the rock, and it folds away to the left and to the right, to the west and east side. And there are 105 climbs up both sides. And everybody who goes up, any of those 105 climbs, they all come down the descent route, because it does, there are, the fixed ropes hanging there that you can use your gree on, descend the ropes. And it has the other 2/3 that are scrambling, so you can get down that way. So, but any way you do it, whether you're going up the descent route or a real climbing route, a technical climbing route, it's hard work. It's immensely hard work. It's an endurance climb for sure, and you have to be present mentally, emotionally, whatever, all of those things. You have to really be present, because there are bad things that can happen, a lot of them, and you have to really pay attention. I didn't think about anything but what I was doing all the way up, for two reasons. One, because you have to be really careful. You have to be aware. You have to be really sure of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you have to really, for me anyway, for somebody who's 70, you have to really marshal all of your strength. It's an endurance climb. And so I fought fatigue all the way up. I knew I could do the ropes, because I've done the ropes countless times, practicing, training for both events, 4 years ago. And this event, like I said, I trained for like 15 weeks to do this, because it is an endurance climb. and then as you reach 70, your endurance starts to wane a little bit. So I didn't really think about anything else but being careful, being attentive, and my friends, seeing where they were and being attentive to them, and marshaling my strength, my fatigue, trying to keep going. There were a lot of times where I'd stopped, put my hands on my hips and try to suck in some air, because the air is thinner. And my biggest problem for any endurance activity of any kind, any sustained physical activity, my biggest problem is breathing, because I grew up in a huge cloud. My house was a huge cloud of cigar and cigarette smoke for like 20 something years. I grew up in
You're
that.
talking about as a child?
As a child, yeah. So
yeah, New York City.
I was like the poster child for secondhand smoke. So anything more strenuous than getting up out of my chair and I'm huffing and puffing, it really damaged my lungs. So anything endurance like that, I really have to work hard. I strain a lot more than all the people with me, and my foot, of course, slowed me down a lot too, because I can no longer, like, what do they call that? Flex or point my foot straight down, and coming back down, that was a real hindrance, a real hindrance. And not only can't I do it, but it's painful to try to do it. So they would, just point their feet down and race down the slabs up the top of the top third of the climb. I couldn't do that. I had to turn my foot and kind of use my heel to brake on it, and it was a lot harder for me than it was for them. They don't realize that, and they probably never will until they're 70 and their foot has been wrecked, but, I didn't want to complain about it. It was my day, but it was my fault that we were up there having this trouble, but it was a lot harder for me than it was for them. So I didn't have time to think about all that stuff until I got to the top. And when I got to the top, it was like, tears time. I was wrecked. It was, what's the word? It was a very emotional experience, to have done all that, and to have done all that with all those friends, and to have the opportunity, and just, what's the word? I know a lot of people I have known a lot of people in my life who didn't get to reach this age, and who didn't have these opportunities. And it was overwhelming.
What do you think you learned through the experience?
Oh, goodness. I could write a book about that. Maybe I will.
Maybe that's book number 2 right there. Tell me this. What's one thing you learned? Maybe not the most important, because that puts a lot of pressure.
I learned that no matter what shape I'm in, because I'm really, my foot's wrecked, and my from the foot issue, I was limping for so many months that it threw out the knee on the other side, my good knee. My formerly good knee threw that out too, from all my body was out of kilter for so long. It threw out my knee anyway. So I have a lot going on physically, and I'm a lot older than what I did the last time, and I've kind of learned that no matter what's going on, physically, emotionally, mentally, I got all kinds of stuff going on. I can block it out, and I can do what I need to do. Darn it! It was one of a series. I'm not sure how to put it. I don't think I've ever set myself a goal in life that I didn't reach, that I didn't accomplish, which is really, really good to know about yourself. Once I get to the point where I commit to a goal, I do it. End of story. And this one was a goal that, for many, many reasons, I've gone into like the tip of the iceberg here, but for many reasons, I wasn't sure I'd be able to do it. So it was really gratifying to get up to the top, exhausted and wrecked and gasping for air and just wishing I hadn't done it. And yet, on some level, glad that on one little bitty tiny level, wishing I hadn't done it because it was exhausting and hard and all that, but still glad I had done it. And it's really, what's the word? I guess gratifying is the word. Satisfying, to know that you can put everything else aside and just go do it.
That is interesting that you mentioned you've never set a goal for yourself that you couldn't meet or you didn't meet.
Yeah.
How do you go about choosing these goals? Because you first climbed El Cap at 66. Like, what is the process to you about something becoming a goal? Because, for your 70th birthday, for instance, there is literally a million things you could do. What leads you to choose something and then go after it, if that makes sense? How do you sift through all the possibilities?
It's really simple. It's whatever grips me passionately the most. It's always been that. An idea pops into my brain, into my heart, whatever you want to call it, into my psyche. And the moment that the idea pops into my little brain, I know that that's what I'm going to do. It's always been that way. Like when I started my orchestra, I created an orchestra. When we moved to West Sacramento, I created an orchestra and I conducted it for 4 years. Which is no small feat.
That's scarier to me than El Cap, if you want to be honest.
It is a very scary proposition, and but the moment that I had the idea, the moment that the idea popped into my brain, my heart, whatever you want to call that, I knew I was going to do it because I knew it just needed to be done, and I knew that I was the one to do it. I don't know how to explain that. I just knew. And when you start with that definiteness, absoluteness, certainty. Okay, there's a good word for it. When you start with that kind of certainty, you know you're going to get there. No matter what happens, you'll figure it out. Whatever obstacles come up, you'll figure it out because passionately you know that that's the right thing to do. That's how it was with the orchestra. That's how it was when I decided to move to France for the year for my junior year of college. I had never lived away from home before. My parents were so controlling and so Eastern European, and I was mommy's little girl, and I went to high school in the city, and I went to college in the city, so I was under their thumb, 100%. And then I decided to go to France for my junior year of college. They didn't think I could do it. They didn't think I'd qualify. So they said, yeah, sure. But I did qualify. I was the top of my class in all of my languages, and so I qualified no problem. But I mean, moving away, not only away but around the world for a year. This wasn't a semester abroad or a small crash course. This is a whole year of school. Sounds kind of scary in retrospect, but it didn't to me, not one bit. So all of these things I've done. I've done all kinds of things. Becoming a publisher. I mean, I had no intentions of becoming a publisher, but when the idea took root, it was. I mean, how would you start to become a publisher? Who knows? Who knows what publishers do? Most people don't have a clue what publishers actually do. I didn't either. But I had a great
So what
book.
do you do? Like you've done this so many times in life. How do you go about saying, okay, this is what I want to do now?
Well, the first thing
what
you
do
have
you
to
do to get to that point that you can do it?
The first thing you have to do when you have an idea like this that you absolutely can't put aside, it batters at your brain until you just scream, okay, I'll do it. And it's not a choice really. It just takes over your brain. So the first thing you have to do is find out what you need to know and what you need to do to know that. So I had to find out what publishers do. I had no idea. So I started reading and started going to the libraries and asking, librarians are wonderful sources of information. and I started, going on. By that point, there was a web that I could use. I wasn't too well versed in using it, but, because this is a long time ago. So you'd have to do this kind of thing, you have to just find out what you need to know. I mean, like when Alex said, yeah, sure, Mom, we can go up El Cap, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago now. I didn't really fully expect him to agree to take me up El Cap because he knows what kind of climber I am. I'm no great shakes of a climber. I never will be. I started old. I was almost 60 when I started climbing. I had kids. I had all kinds of jobs, and I can only do it, now and then. So I'll never be a really good climber. And he knows this. So I didn't really expect him to say yes, but he did. He said, yeah, sure, Mom, but you have to learn how to jug. So that stopped me. And I didn't say anything about that. And then he left on another one of his expeditions. He was gone out of my life for months and months. So I had to learn how to jug. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know the word. So I went online and I asked all my friends by email, what's jugging? And found out what that meant. So you have to learn what you need to know. I needed to know about jugging. I needed to know how to do it. And then you need to find out what you need to have or to do. So I had to have Jumars. I didn't know what Jumars were. So I had to find out. So you start from scratch and you have to find out what you need to know. And then what you need to have, what you need to do. And that's all anybody does in any job. And people don't think about it that way because they did it when they were 19 or 20 or whatever in their first job and never thought about that afterwards. But that's what you do in any job. You find out what you need to know. In most cases, it's you have to know about your field, whatever your field is. That's what you study in college or in a technical school or whatever. That's what you need to know. And in that school, you find out what you need to have, what you need to be able to do that job. It's the same.
And in that, there's, I'm sure, plenty that you when you find out what you need to know. Same with climbing for you. There's plenty that you realize you don't need to learn or you don't need to know.
Yes, exactly.
I need to singularly focus on this one thing that Alex told me to focus on to achieve this goal.
Exactly.
So I'm sure you need to sift through that information yourself.
Exactly. Like when I became a conductor, I didn't have to know everything about conducting. I didn't have to know everything about all the music we were going to do. I had to tailor my education, if you will. I had to tailor it to exactly what I was going to be doing. And so I did. And it worked out wonderfully. It was amazing.
Well, I don't mean to dwell on this, but this is such incredible wisdom. For what kind of timeline do you give yourself to achieve some of these, or what kind of timeline have you experienced going from 0 to achieving the goal? You know what I mean? Because some of
Yeah,
us feel
I do.
like, oh, to be an orchestra
Yeah,
conductor, I have to study for 20 years.
yeah, yeah.
But in reality, what is it? What have you
Well,
experienced with pursuing an idea from nothing?
it depends, of course, on what field the idea is
Right.
in.
Yep.
With the conducting, I mean, I had studied conducting all my life. I had gone to Central Park, in the summers when the symphony in New York gave outdoor concerts. I saw the greats and I watched them. Because I always was interested in this stuff, and I watched them on television. I got to see Leonard Bernstein in person. I got to see Aaron, Aaron Copland is from New York. All the biggies are from New York. And so I watched them. I grew up with them. And I knew that I knew enough about it to do this. I had nothing on paper. I had no degree in this. I had no diplomas. I had no training, real training. All of my music is self-taught. But it was self-taught for, at that point, like 45 years. That's a long time to learn anything. And the motivation, of course, was there, so it depends on what it is. And like for the climbing, I knew there were a lot of aspects of climbing that I would never be able to master. I know this, and it's still true. It'll always be true. I started too old. I don't have the upper body strength for, like I can't do pull-ups and push-ups and all that stuff. So you have to whittle down the whole skill to just what you need to know. And that, I guess, is a skill in itself, knowing what you don't need, And a lot of people would need, I would guess, guidance to do that. I've always been an individualist, I guess, and I just figured it out myself, I don't know. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. And it does sound like, too, these these varied skills and these varied interests that you've had through your life, bud from some seed that's been planted, studying abroad, or, being passionate about music and language, and having a son who's very gifted at climbing. If that seed wasn't there, you might not you wouldn't have the ability to know what you needed to know. And
exactly.
So it's felt natural in a way. Is there something that maybe, a skill or an area or an idea that you can see coming down the line that it's like, I would love to do more of that, I just haven't had those things line up yet, or had that idea come about yet?
Well, heck yeah. All kinds of things. All kinds of things. I mean, I love to try new stuff. I mean, within the world of climbing, again, I mean, there's all kinds of things I want to accomplish or try, or at least try. At least there are a lot of places in the world I would love to go climb, because everywhere you go, I have climbed in a lot of places in the world. I've climbed in Greece and in Mexico and France and Canada a little bit. And everywhere you go, the rock is different and the experience is different. And everywhere I go, I get to use my languages, which I love, And so
all 5 of them, right?
Yeah, well, I can get by. I have 4.5 that are fluent, and I have 4 more that I can kind of get by and be sociable in. So, anywhere I go, I can get by, except the Asian languages, like Chinese and Indian, and I don't know any of those. But so I like to climb. I like to combine the climbing experience with cultural and linguistic experiences. But there's other stuff too. All kinds of things I like to do. I don't usually know about them until the idea occurs to me. And like the orchestra, or like publishing. Never in a million years would I have ever thought about becoming a publisher. Never. Didn't interest me in the slightest. But I kind of had to. Cause I had a publisher for my first book way back in 1985, 88. I had a publisher, and we had a great book ready to roll. And I had done the pre-marketing info for them, because I was local. And the book was called, it was about touring Sacramento, the Sacramento region with children, Sacramento with kids eventually it became. But so I had a publisher, and at the moment of publication, they they went under. So I was absolutely destroyed. I was wrecked. My baby, my first published book, dead in the water because they went under. They belly up. And so my two options were to, put it in my desk drawer and say, well, that was an interesting experience and move on. Or, well, three possibilities, or try to sell it to another publisher or do it myself. I didn't want to do it myself, but it turns out that no other publishers out there are interested in a book with that small a market. Sacramento is too small for like a New York publisher to take on. So my only option was to forget about it or to publish it myself. So I did. I learned. I found out what I needed to know. Found out what I needed to do. I became a business. I had no intentions of ever being a business. I hate that whole world, but I am now a business.
What made you want to pursue the business aspect when you hated it? Did you find some unforeseen?
I did not want to pursue the business aspect, but I wanted my darn book published.
Did you enjoy that pursuit of starting the publishing business?
Okay,
so you found that along the way that, okay, I actually enjoy this.
I enjoy any learning experience, basically. I love learning new stuff. And this was a learning experience par excellence, So I learned and learned and learned. And in time, I became the president of the Sacramento Publishers Association. How about that? And I remained their president, I think, 2 years. And the Sacramento Publishers Association has grown and grown. Now it's called the Northern California Publishers and Authors, I think. But I'm not part of it anymore because I'm not publishing anymore right now. I'm too busy. But yeah, I love learning new stuff. And any of these ventures of mine, I mean, you really have to recreate your entire education. You have to learn from scratch, and I enjoy that. So it's a challenge.
How far ahead do you plan? Obviously, you plan for this birthday, but how far do you plan your life ahead? Because it sounds like so many of the things you do and you're passionate about came from circumstance, came because you had to, or something was forced. How do you look ahead in your life?
Well, the old adage that says, life is what happens when we're making other plans.
I've heard that, but I forgot about it. That's a great reminder. Yeah.
I kind of live by that because none of these things were planned. When the publisher went under and I was kind of thrust into that, I hadn't planned for that. I had no intentions of ever doing anything like that. I hated the whole, business world. I just nothing, no interest whatsoever. And then it was thrust upon me, and I made that choice. And the orchestra too. I knew. I mean, all my life I'd watched the conductors. I knew that stuff. I knew how to do it. And I can play various instruments. I've played in many orchestras and chamber groups and performed solo and duo and all that stuff all my life. But I knew in my heart of hearts that, I'm not trained in that. I have nothing on paper, nothing to prove that I know what I know. And so I knew that I'd never, ever be able to conduct an orchestra. And then we moved to West Sacramento, where back then, West Sacramento is on the other side of the river from Sacramento, and it's in a different county. So it's really a different entity. And it wasn't a city back then. Excuse me. It's a city now, but it wasn't a city back then. It was an unincorporated area. And it was a sleepy little dusty Delta town. And there was nothing there. For everything that the residents needed in West Sac, they went across the river to Sacramento. There were no stores. There was no cinema. There was no culture of any kind. There was nothing there. And I didn't want to raise my babies in that kind of environment. So my choice was to always be driving across the river with everybody or to create it right in our own little town. And so I decided to do that. I created the orchestra. And so it's always been kind of thrust upon me. And in retrospect, in hindsight, it was a great idea. But when it's happening, it's not usually a great idea. I never wanted to be a publisher. I really didn't. There are other things too. This is like a repeating current throughout my life. life is what has happened while I was making other plans, as it were. So I don't really plan it out. Like going up El Cap, of course, I had to plan. I had to train first time I trained for 18 weeks. That's like a college course, And the second time, this time, for my birthday, I trained for 15 weeks. So yeah, that involves a lot of pre-planning and orchestration, if you will. But it's been largely thrust upon me. I never really planned it for most of these things.
Was there similar to how other things have kind of come about, was there ever a path or an idea or a skill or an opportunity that you think back on and think, I kind of wonder what was down that road, but things just didn't line up how they did with publishing or being in starting the orchestra or climbing even? Is there one in particular that thought, I wonder what was down there?
Yeah, I mean, life is nothing but choices. Every day you make choices, and there were some things that, jobs that we didn't take, my husband and I, or the things we interviewed for that might have been wonderful, but might not have. You never know. You can't second guess yourself in retrospect. You can't. Regrets are useless. Thinking, oh, I wonder what if. That's ridiculous. That's a waste of time. Just move on. So yes and no. To that.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like you're the type of person that dwells on that too much.
No.
Well, speaking of that and living this way, what kind of maybe advice would you give yourself 30, 40 years ago about what you're capable of now in your 70s, and knowing how much life there actually is left to live?
I'm not sure, because I was a lot dumber back then.
It's hard.
It's hard to take the experience I have now and transplant it back there, because I was making choices kind of on the blind back then. Not all of them, but some of them. I wish I had known, like one thing that did definitely change my life that I wish I had known way back then, and that was the moment when I don't know. Do we have another few minutes for a little story?
Sure, absolutely.
I went through a period of like 5, 6, 7 years when people were dying all around me, and I was winding up doing more and more work, more and more like estate. Right? My father-in-law died, and then the next summer my own father died, and when he died, I wound up with 3 houses in Pennsylvania that I had to deal with, and all on my own, alone, while working more than full time, and while changing offices, and while I was doing the work of like 6 people. And I was the executive, and the year following that, I divorced my husband, and then he died like 5 weeks later. And
and this is raising children too.
While raising children, while teaching more than full time, while taking care of my own home and gardens and dog, and it's exhausting. And I never had a moment to myself for like 6, 7 years. And so every day I would go off to the college. I would teach all day, do my lesson planning, do my grading, I would come home, change my clothes, go down in the office, and become the executor of my husband's estate, which was extremely messy. Long story. Anyway, it was extremely. He hadn't prepared anything, and he had done everything the way he wanted, not the way the companies wanted, and so it was very messy. I worked on that for like 2 years. Every waking moment when I was not teaching, I was doing that. And so like 10, 11 o'clock at night, I couldn't see any longer. I would get up and I would take our big dog for a walk to kind of clear my head before bed. And back then, I think I already mentioned that, I knew that I couldn't do any sustained physical activity, but it was a very big dog. It was a Malamute, and she, built to pull, built to run. And so I'd trot along beside her, and we'd go for our walk. And one night I came bursting through the door with the dog and yelling, "Alex, Alex!" Alex was not living there, but he was coming through once in a while, restocking his van and resting, whatever. And so he was there. I came running through the kitchen yelling, "Alex, Alex, I just ran a mile with the dog." And I knew I had reached my Everest. Because I knew that I couldn't do this stuff. in any significant fashion. So I had climbed Everest. I was over the moon. I had run a whole mile. Imagine that with my lungs. And so Alex comes walking down the hall, munching his cookie, and said, "Oh, cool, Mom. If you can do a mile, you can do a mile and a half." And that completely took the wind out of my sails. I was deflated. And at the same moment, I knew that he was absolutely right. If you can do a mile, you can do a mile and a quarter, a mile and 2 more steps. If you can do 2 miles, you can do 2 and a quarter, 2 and a half. If you can do a half a marathon, you can do a whole marathon. There is no end to that philosophy, that mindset. There is no end to that mindset. And if you embrace that mindset, you can do anything. And I mean that quite literally. If you embrace that mindset fully, you can do anything. Somebody like me to go up El Cap is so unrealistic and ridiculously impossible. And yet, here I am. If you can embrace that mindset, you can do anything. Anybody can do anything, but people don't. And I'm not sure why. I blame our schooling for a lot of that, our educational system for a lot of that, and our media for a lot of that. I mean, we are told our entire lives, if you're this age, you should be taking these pills and you should be, taking this medicine to go to sleep, and you should not be doing this. Don't do this without talking to your doctor first. And, it's hammered into us. If you watch television, most of the ads are for drugs these days. It's horrible. It should be illegal. Anyway, that's one of my soapboxes. You got me on a roll here.
Do you think that period, that 5 to 7 year period, is what, I don't know, maybe fueled these last few decades of
well, it not
you
really.
Know what I mean?
Yeah, not really.
Did you feel like you had to go through that?
Not really fueled it, but it made me understand that I can do anything. If I could get through that, doing the work of 6 people, I was remodeling 3 houses in Pennsylvania and 1 in California while doing all that. I was doing it by phone every day. I would call Pennsylvania at 5 a.m. because the time difference, and I would pick carpeting, and they would tell me the problems with the brads in the walls, and I was remodeling 4 houses at the same time, while teaching full time, while this, while that, while being the executor of. If I could do that, I could do anything, literally.
That's inspiring.
But what I learned is that anybody can do anything if they embrace that mindset that my son takes for granted. Oh yeah, sure, Mom. Bravo. If you can do that, you can do a mile and a quarter. and so I did. I went out and did a mile and a half, and then I did 2 miles, and then I've done 4 marathons now, and lots of half marathons. So yeah, anybody can do anything. They just don't know it yet.
They just don't know it yet. So speaking of which, what are you doing for your 80th birthday?
Oh, that's way off in the distance. I'm still planning my Yosemite season for this summer. I have a lot of plans. I have plans for this season, and Garrett and some of the others from my ascent with them this last year, they're going to help me do it.
Well, if I've learned anything from you is 10 years. There, you never know what you might be into.
Exactly. Can't plan that far out. Yeah.
No, you can't. Well, holy cow, what an amazing conversation to start out the week. I can't thank you enough for making the time.
Sure. I enjoy it. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
And I will point everyone to your book. Where's the place you would like people to buy your book, The Sharp Edge Life?
The easiest for most people is just to click on Amazon, and that's fine. You can get it in Barnes and Nobles or any of the big bookstores. Anywhere you buy books, you can get it.
Fantastic. Well, I can't recommend it enough. I have a copy right here on my desk, and I'll let you know when this comes out. And until we talk again, have a wonderful day and keep inspiring people.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.